We've been together almost 7 years and married for a little over 3. We have a son, 8 months old, who is my absolute joy and whole world. Part of my hesitation to seek out a divorce is knowing my husband would get 50% custody. That's not a question of if he would. But here's the rub. My husband, let's call him George, has always been a little annoying, frustrating. I'm 90% sure he's on the spectrum, but I can't make that diagnosis, for example. If I put ketchup on my own plate of food that George doesn't deem is where ketchup belongs, he makes a huge fuss about it and is actually upset I have ketchup on my own personal plate of food. He also gets very micromanagey with the way I clean things. I have diagnosed ADHD, so I know I can be a bit illogical with my cleaning process, but I have a process and things get clean. Yet George has to tell me I'm doing something the wrong way and gets upset and extra annoying when I don't do it his exact way, and the only way a chore could possibly ever be done because it's more logical. These are small potatoes in the larger scheme of things, though. Before I got pregnant, George admitted that he would purposefully push my buttons to trigger arguments with me on occasion. When I got pregnant, I told him the stress he caused when he did this could harm the baby, and he stopped. Fast forward to not even a week postpartum, when I was hospitalized for an unknown infection leading to sepsis, and he started pushing buttons again. Like literally while I was in the hospital and dying. He'll say to others, I'm a good mom, but privately say things that make me feel guilty and are conflicting. For example, he'll tell the baby, Mommy doesn't want to be with you, so I guess it's just you and me, buddy. When I ask him to help me after I've had a hard day with the baby, he really made it clear I was to go back to work full-time before my maternity leave, 6 months, was up, not because of finances, but because I just needed to actually work finally, as if staying home with an infant isn't work. But then, in the same breath, George sends me social media videos about SAKMs being great, and women who don't stay at home basically failing their families. When I express how this makes me feel, because it's definitely not good, he acts like what he's sending me isn't his intent to hurt me, and says I'm overreacting. I breastfeed, and he knows how important that is for me. But whenever I stumble into the slightest issue, instead of being supportive, like I've asked multiple times, he immediately jumps to, we can just formula feed. Oh, and he makes cow jokes all the time. I used to think they were a little funny, but now they are not. And I've expressed I want him to stop, but he keeps going. But I am our son's primary caregiver and do most of the emotional labor for the household. But my work isn't acknowledged. And when George has to do one of my usual tasks, he makes it seem like I've never done it. And he's always the one that has to, which is a blatant lie. Whenever he starts an argument with me and I feel myself getting way too worked up, I walk away for a bit to collect my thoughts and calm down. I've told him to give me space. I've explained why I need this. At one point, we went to couples therapy, and the therapist agreed this was the best course of action for me to take. And George needed to leave me alone until I could calm down. And yet, he chases after me, pins me to one room, and says I need to grow up and have an adult conversation with him without being over-emotional. Like I'm trying, but you following me and not giving me space is causing a legitimate meltdown. Sometimes I literally will just scream at him at this point. Like no words, just continuous screams. Because why can't you leave me alone until I can come back to the conversation in the calm and rational manner he wants me to have so badly? It's like he purposefully enjoys pushing me over an emotional cliff so he can feel superior and right in an argument. Finally, though, there's certainly more. George is really mean to me sometimes for no reason. He's constantly belittling me and putting me down in front of others, to the point people have started to notice and ask me if I'm okay. I don't want my child growing up and hearing our fights or hearing his father putting down his mother. I'm starting to think the best course of action would be for us to get a divorce and hopefully successfully co-parent when we are not caught up in our toxic drama. But I'm not sure I want that truly because I still love George and I think he still loves me. What can I do to avoid divorce? Do I just need to toughen up and start ignoring the button pushes and brush off mean comments? Should I just wait it out until we are getting good sleep again and chalk things up to having a baby? It's hard on both of us. I don't know that I want to. but I really don't want to have to share custody either. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Good Lord, this post sent my anxiety through the roof. Hell no, you do not need to just toughen up to keep the peace with someone who is cornering you until you're screaming during a meltdown. You realize that's hurtful, right? As a woman who is fond of and who has loved men on the spectrum, I can tell you that this behavior is not normal. No matter how he may or may not have insight into your experience, a partner is supposed to uplift you, respect you, support you, make you feel cared for, not terrorize you until you're screaming. If that doesn't come naturally to him, then he needs to learn how to do it anyway. Even if he doesn't understand, he has to work at it until he can meet you halfway. You don't deserve to be treated like that. A person who loves someone doesn't treat them like that. Have you considered individual therapy? Being a new mom is hard. Take care of yourself the best you can. Your feelings are totally reasonable. Comment 2. I don't know what other options are. He is intentionally verbally hurtful and emotionally manipulative. He is switching passive aggression with aggression and enjoys making you suffer. It is not that he mindlessly says things and does not know he is harming you because he was able to stop during pregnancy. I think that if you stay with him, your self-respect will go down. This will wear you down. I recommend you to read the Out of the Fog website. It is a pretty good manual about how to deal with difficult people. I mean, whether you co-parent or stay married, not a good idea in my opinion. You will have to deal with this dude. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking around after my last post. Things have escalated since then, and I'm not sure where to begin. Just when I thought George couldn't get any more infuriating, he pulled a stunt that made my blood boil. He went behind my back and arranged for a surprise family photo shoot. Sounds sweet, right? Wrong. He invited his ex, who he's always insisted is just a good friend, to join us. There she was, posing with my son, as if she had any right. I was livid, feeling betrayed and humiliated in front of the photographer, who clearly sensed the tension. The aftermath was a mess. I confronted George, and he had the audacity to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that he thought it would be nice for our son to have pictures with all the people who cared about him. It was a slap in the face, and it made me question everything about our relationship. But that wasn't the end of it. The next week, I found out George had been lying about our finances. He'd been funneling money into a separate account for months, preparing, it seemed, for a life without me. When I demanded answers, he shrugged it off, saying it was his safety net. That's when I knew I couldn't trust him as far as I could throw him. I took action. I gathered evidence of his financial deceit and consulted a lawyer. I was done playing the forgiving wife. It was time to show George that I wasn't the pushover he thought I was. Then, as if the universe was on my side, an unexpected event changed everything. George's ex, the one from the photo shoot, reached out to me. She was remorseful, admitting she'd been unaware of the full situation and George's manipulations. She handed me a stack of messages between them that painted a clear picture of George's character, or lack thereof. It was the final nail in the coffin. With my lawyer's help, I filed for divorce, using the evidence to secure a favorable custody arrangement. George was blindsided, his smug demeanor finally crumbling when he realized I was serious and had the upper hand. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was free from George's gaslighting and control. I could finally breathe. Thanks for reading. X has a breakdown and loses everything. So I take the kids in the house and leave him with nothing. My ex and I got together 12 years ago. From the time I moved in, we either split finances equally or I paid for the majority of everything while he was out of work. In 2019, my husband had a breakdown, became violent, had affairs, arrested multiple times. I did everything to keep our family together, but he had no interest in helping himself. So for safety's sake, I filed for a restraining order in 2022. My 3 stepchildren's mom lives less than 15 minutes away, and she's had full legal custody since the start of all of this in 2019. The kids were still visiting us and staying with us, but after I filed the restraining order, they moved in full-time with their mom. My daughter with my husband stayed with me. My stepdaughter, 15 years old, reached out recently to say she was upset I was still in the house when she couldn't be, that she and her siblings were there first. She said I seem happier and more upbeat since all of this went down. True, the abuse was a nightmare, but that she has lost everything, and that's not fair. She told me living with her mother is unsafe. There have never been safety or parenting concerns with mom. Not sure what the deal is there. And that if her dad had the house back, she could live in it. She seemed to think the house was only her dad's, so I clarified it belongs to both of us, and we're sorting it out through the courts. She insists she knows the courts take time, but she needs something to happen immediately because she's lost everything, and it doesn't make sense why her half-sister and I get everything. I asked her what she feels like should happen, and because she and her older siblings, 17-year-old male, 20-year-old male, who lives out of state for uni, lived at the house first, she thinks her dad should stay there so they can go there when they want to. I was pretty blunt that her dad alone made the choices that got him arrested and removed from the home, and that crushed all of us in different ways. While she's aware of some of what her father has done and agrees he screwed up a ton, she kept asking what's the difference between her and her half-sister. That means her half-sister and I get to be here. I told her the only difference was the custody. Her mother has custody of her and lives where she lives. So my stepdaughter went to the house they were already living in, and I have custody of her half-sister, so we stayed in the house we were already living in. In her mind, none of this is her fault, so she shouldn't be affected at all. And while I agree in theory, how do you tell a teen that, sorry, your dad screwed you and I can't fix it? It seems like no matter how we talk this through, she is stuck on the fact that it's not fair for her, and I have the power to make it okay. How do I have this conversation with her without making her feel like she's not important, or that she's less important than her half-sister? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I'm confused. You have a restraining order against your ex. Why can't his daughter, your stepdaughter, visit? Why is she banned from the house? I get she maybe wants to live with her dad again, and that's not going to happen. But are you 100% sure things are okay with her biological mom? Teens can absolutely exaggerate, but it seems like if you helped raise her, you could take her concerns seriously and check in with her mom. I mean, the whole thing sounds like a nightmare mess, and your stepdaughter is demanding something that clearly won't happen. But the impetus is likely from feeling abandoned by multiple people, her dad and you. This seems more about a cry for help from the kid making ridiculous requests. But rather than getting bogged down in the request part, at least address the cry for help. Bring up the concerns with her mom. Maybe see if visiting you and your daughter, her half-sister, once a week for dinner is something she'd like. Help her have a little continuity through this. Comment 2. How old is your other daughter? Is she close to your stepdaughter? On top of everything else your stepdaughter is going through, it can be very confusing and sad to lose your stepfamily through divorce, especially when the families have been blended for a long time. There's no common support system in place for kids in that position, the way there often is when their birth parents split up. Maybe she's acting out because she misses you and your biological daughter and doesn't know how to articulate it, or even if she's allowed to miss you. Could you have her over for a visit to talk things over in person? Now, for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. A lot has happened since the last post. So, the house situation got even messier. My ex somehow convinced the judge he was stable enough for supervised visits with our daughter. I was fuming. This guy who turned our lives upside down gets to play dad again? And the worst part? The judge ordered these visits to happen at our house, my house, the one place I felt safe from him. The first visit was a disaster. He showed up with gifts, acting like Mr. Perfect Dad. But I saw right through it. Our daughter was confused, happy to see him, but still scared. I was on edge the whole time. After he left, she clung to me, asking if he was going to come back and hurt us again. It broke my heart. Then, out of nowhere, my stepdaughter dropped a bomb. She confessed that her mom's new boyfriend was the reason she felt unsafe. He was mean, yelling all the time, and she was scared it would get worse. She begged to move back in with me. I was torn. I wanted to protect her, but legally my hands were tied. I talked to a lawyer and they said if we could prove the environment at her mom's was harmful, we could fight for custody. It was a long shot, but I had to try. We gathered evidence, statements from my stepdaughter, and even her brothers backed her up. The court date was set, and it was like waiting for a ticking bomb to go off. The day of the hearing, my ex showed up, smug as ever, thinking he'd win. But when my stepdaughter took the stand and told the judge everything, you could see his face fall. The judge was appalled. He granted temporary custody to me while they investigated her mom's situation. My ex was furious. He blamed me for everything, said I was trying to take his kids away. But this wasn't about him. It was about keeping those kids safe. Now, with my stepdaughter living with us, things were better, but still tense. She was healing, but the scars were deep. Our daughter was happier too. Having her sister around helped her deal with her dad's visits. But then, another curveball. My ex lost his job, and with it, his visitation rights. The court said he needed a stable environment to see our daughter, and without a job, he couldn't provide that. He was out of our lives again, and I could breathe. The sweetest part? The house. The court finally settled it. Since I'd paid for most of it and he was a mess, they awarded it to me. My ex was livid, but there was nothing he could do. The kids and I finally had a place to call our own, without the shadow of him looming over us. It's been well. I'll just get into it, but we're getting through it. The kids are my priority, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep them safe and happy. Thanks for reading. My soon-to-be ex plays nice. After my LASIK, but when I find out it's all an act. I take the job across the country and leave him to fend for himself with zero regrets. Hello everyone, just wanted to give a quick update. Recently I had my LASIK operation done on my eyes. So I wasn't available to answer all the private messages and comments. I wasn't allowed screen time for 48 to 72 hours. But thanks to all of you who opened my eyes, I was having some doubts. In my mind, I was doing the right thing, but people were telling me I should reconsider. So it created a doubt whether I'm doing the right thing or not. But the comments from people have cleared it. So where are we? That's the discussion I had with my soon-to-be ex, STBX. My soon-to-be ex came to see me during my operation. I never asked him, but he still came. He took me home after my operation. Since I wasn't allowed to put pressure or dust in my eyes, it made the majority of the chores very difficult to do. But he did all my chores, starting from dusting, cooking, and laundry. He was with me reminding me to take my eye drops. It felt good. For once, I thought I got my husband back. But I thought about this a lot. He never did anything like this unless I asked him to. He never did my portion of the chores, even when I was sick with the flu. He is only doing this to be on my good side. I don't want someone who only acts nice to gain something. Plus, the messages he shared with his affair partner still haunt me. It's been imprinted in my brain. I don't think doing 2 days worth of chores will make me forget the humiliation me and my kids went through because of him. So I sat him down. It's easier to talk to him wearing glasses. I told him I'm still going through with the divorce. I am not going to take his kids away from him. He is still their dad. I can never live under the same roof. Even if I take his advice and go to counseling together, I would still never be able to let go of the fact that he cheated. Our kids don't deserve parents who resent the other. It's better we part ways and continue as co-parents. I did suggest counseling as a family so that we can be the best co-parents. But as far as being married, that's out of the question. He can resent me all he wants, but he still has to be there for the kids. He agreed, although I can see the sadness in his eyes. He said sorry for everything that he has done. He opened up about his affair, that he just thought it would be great, because we got so stuck in our mundane lives that the affair was an escape. But he didn't realize what he was losing. He blocked his affair partner and ended his relationship with her. He acknowledges that not only did he destroy his marriage, but he also ruined her career. He also stooped so low in his kids' eyes. He also said he will never date again. I told him to not make promises he knows he cannot keep. Another problem we are facing now is our kids. My oldest son knows what's happening. Apparently, the rumors have reached his school. The teacher taught my middle child, so she also knows. My son is not talking to his dad. He even refused to eat the meal he cooked and has been living on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. My other kids followed his lead. They refused to talk to my STBX, and it hurts him. I even caught him crying 2 times. I can understand what my kids are going through. I don't want them to hate their dad. He is a crappy husband, but a great dad. I don't know what to do with them. If you have suggestions, please let me know. Also, I cannot reply to all the comments because I'm only allowed 30 minutes of screen time every 2 hours. But I will read the comments once I'm fully recovered. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. He might have been a good dad at one point, but a great parent doesn't prioritize their libido over the well-being of their children. When you are a parent and choose to have an affair, not only are you saying you don't care about the harm to your spouse, but you are also saying you don't care about how it will affect your children. Destroying the stability of your child's home over an affair is not something that a parent prioritizing their children would do. Doing so with the teacher who taught your children is even worse. Your children will probably have some resentment. That's natural. I would second others here and suggest counseling to help the children work through their complicated feelings about this. Comment 2. I'd get them to see a psychologist as soon as possible. The anger and resentment are normal, and it's up to him to do the work to gain their forgiveness. But they need a safe space in the meantime to process it all and cope with the changes that are coming. They have been exposed to grown-up issues beyond their emotional understanding, and a psychologist can help them through it. Congratulations for making the right choice for you and your kids in the long term. It's not easy, but future you will be so grateful for your strength now. Now, for the update. Thank you for sticking around for more of my life's twists and turns. The last month has been interesting to say the least. After my LASIK, things seemed to be looking up, but then life threw us another curveball. My STBX, who had been surprisingly helpful post-surgery, got laid off. It was a shock to us both, and suddenly, the financial stability we needed for our separate futures was on shaky ground. He came over looking defeated, and I could tell he was worried about how this would affect our divorce proceedings. I won't lie, part of me felt a twinge of satisfaction seeing him knocked down a peg after everything he put us through. But then I remembered the kids and how this would impact them. We had a long talk, and he admitted that he had been living beyond his means to impress his affair partner. It was a moment of vulnerability I hadn't seen in him for years. He was scared, and for the first time, I saw him as just another human being, flawed and full of regret. The kids, meanwhile, were still giving him the cold shoulder. My oldest had become the ringleader of the silent treatment, and it was heartbreaking to watch. I tried talking to them, explaining that people make mistakes, and that their dad was still the man who coached their soccer games and read them bedtime stories. But the hurt was too fresh, and they weren't ready to forgive. In the midst of this, I received a job offer. It was a good position, one that would secure our financial future and give me the independence I craved. But it was in another state, and it meant uprooting the kids and starting over. It was a gamble, and I was torn. I discussed it with my STBX, and to my surprise, he encouraged me to take it. He said he'd support whatever decision I made, even if it meant seeing the kids less. It was a selfless act, one that made me question if I ever really knew him at all. The move was interesting, to say the least. Packing up a life's worth of memories wasn't easy, and the kids were anxious about the change. But as we settled into our new home, I saw them slowly coming around. They were making friends, excelling in school, and even my oldest started to soften towards his dad. My STBX found a new job too, one that he said felt more fulfilling than his old one. He was rebuilding his life, just as we were. And though we were miles apart, we were finding a way to co-parent effectively. The risk of moving paid off. The kids were happier, I was thriving in my new job, and even my STBX seemed to be finding his footing. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was a good one. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. Thank you for reading and for being a part of my journey. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.